Just an idle woman of the world with no real work or duties. I would like to get away from the world somewhere and work at sculpturing. Start to do some work in life, wrote Juliette Gordon Low to her mother Nellie in 1905. Juliette Gordon's early years were much like those of other children. Daisy, as she was known to all her friends, received her nickname from an uncle who, upon hearing the news of her birth, exclaimed, "Well, I bet she'll be a Daisy." And she was. Daisy was born, according to her own account, at 11:30 in the year Mama can't remember if it was 1860 or 1861, and I don't know, as I studiously conceal my age even from myself. Actually, it was on All Hallows Eve, October 31st, 1860, when Juliette McGill Kinsey Gordon chose to make her first appearance into this world. Daisy was born to William Washington Gordon II, a Savannaian, successful cotton factor, state legislator, military leader, and international peace negotiator, and his equally accomplished wife, Eleanor. Nellie Kinsey Gordon was a fiery woman whose family helped found Chicago. She was famous amongst the Gordons for sliding down banisters, and she spoke 6 languages fluently and cursed just as fluently in all 6. Daisy, like her parents, was a study in contrast. Her father once wrote her, "You were quite right in supposing a great calm burst upon us when you departed. But while a calm is restful for a time, it grows monotonous, and one longs for the return of a gale." And that's exactly who she was, Hurricane Daisy, a Force 5 storm of ideas and schemes related to her newest pet project or enthusiasm of the moment. Even as a young girl, Daisy's family recognized that she would be different, fondly calling her Crazy instead of Daisy. The most animated of the 6 Gordon children, Juliette often wrote plays for her brothers and sisters, usually giving herself all the starring roles. She was a fair poet, in spite of the fact that she could never spell. Her natural zest for life kept her in trouble, and family and friends exasperated with the antics her mother called Daisy stunts. A perfect example of such a stunt occurred after General William Tecumseh Sherman captured Savannah in December of 1864 and presented it to President Lincoln as a Christmas gift. He paid a visit to his family friend, Nellie Gordon, and upon arriving, the general picked up 4-year-old Daisy. She soon began to inspect his head. When Sherman asked what she was looking for, the reply was, "Your horns, of course." "My horns?" "Well, you are that old devil Sherman, aren't you?" Such totally disarming and frank responses would remain one of Daisy's hallmarks. She once wrote her mother from boarding school, "I can't keep to all the rules. I'm too much like you. I'll keep clear of the big scrapes, but the little ones I can't avoid." After starting school in Savannah, Juliette Low attended Edge Hill and Stewart Hall boarding schools in Virginia, Miss Emmett's School in New Jersey, and finally finished at Mademoiselle Charbonnet's in New York City. It was in these schools that Daisy forged many of the friendships that she would call upon later to help her with her fledgling organization. During Daisy's youth and childhood, she experienced many of the same interests and concerns of today's girls. She enjoyed being outdoors, participating in sports, and spending time with her friends. She worried about school, and while she was very good in some subjects, she was less successful at others, like math and spelling. She loved beautiful clothes, was up on the latest fashions of the day, and would draw out designs for dresses she wanted to have made. Daisy missed her family and friends when she was away from them. She wrote beautiful letters to her mother and father, expressing her feelings. To complain about her roommate, who just happened to be her sister, and also to ask for a little more spending money so she could buy ribbons for her hair and purchase gifts for her brothers and sisters. As a teenager, Daisy discovered that she enjoyed the company of young men, and she had many suitors who found her charming and amusing. When she first noticed a handsome young Englishman who was visiting at Etowah Cliffs, her life would change forever. At the age of 25, when suffering from one of her chronic earaches, Daisy insisted her doctor use a new treatment she had read about. Initially, the doctor refused, but Daisy, who was known for being both persuasive and stubborn, insisted until he gave in and treated her by injecting silver nitrate. A prolonged illness occurred, and she lost most of the hearing in that ear. At age 26, and against the wishes of her parents, Juliette Gordon married the love of her life, William Mackey Low. She chose her parents' wedding day in hopes her marriage would be as happy as theirs. Billow, as she called him, was the son of an extremely wealthy English cotton factor who owned property and had business interests in Savannah. Both families were opposed to the union. Daisy's father cautioned her strongly against marrying a man who didn't work. Andrew Low was equally opposed to the marriage. He had aspirations for his son to marry a titled European. Billow inherited a large fortune after his father's death, so the Gordons could not prevent the marriage. In a freakish accident that occurred on her wedding day, a grain of the good luck rice lodged in her good ear. Daisy proceeded on her honeymoon to St. Catherine's Island, where she fell gravely ill. Her eardrum was punctured during the operation to remove the rice, and she lost all the hearing in that ear. Newly married, she was, for all intents and purposes, deaf. Daisy would, however, use her deafness to her advantage in Girl Scouting. She said she never had to hear anyone tell her no. Her nephew, Arthur Gordon, writes that when she asked people to assume this or that responsibility and they refused, she would thank them sweetly for accepting and shame them into it. Daisy moved with her husband to England, and they purchased Wellsbourne House, a country estate in Warwickshire. They maintained another residence, Lude, a hunting lodge in Scotland, and rented homes in London along with their house in Savannah. Here, Daisy led the life of a great lady. She rode to the hounds, was presented twice at Queen Victoria's court, and was a shining star of the London social season. Her Wellsbourne House guest book reads like the who's who of the Marlborough set and includes everyone from the Prince of Wales and the Duke of Warwick to Jenny Churchill, Mrs. Alice Keppel, and the PBs, the professional beauties of the day. According to Arthur Gordon, Daisy's high spirits and seething energy both pained and enchanted the British. Rudyard Kipling recalled plaintively how Daisy snatched him from his port and cigar one night and made him go salmon fishing in his evening clothes. On another moonlight fishing expedition, Daisy made a mighty cast all the way across the stream and hooked one of her dinner-jacketed guests neatly through the ear. Then, too deaf to hear his howls, she played him violently for some time, roaring triumphantly for the gamekeeper to bring the landing net. Such was her life as Mrs. Low, landing her recognition and appreciation from many admirers until her husband's flagrant and mounting infidelities became too much to bear. By 1903, her husband was pressing her for divorce so he could marry his mistress, Mrs. Anna Bateman. The crowning blow came when Daisy returned from a trip to find herself moved into the servants' wing and Mrs. Bateman living in her house. The storm would not subside until in 1905, when Daisy agreed to give Billow his long-sought divorce. William Mackey Low died before their divorce could be finalized, leaving everything to his mistress, with an allowance for Daisy to be dispersed by Mrs. Bateman. Daisy contested the will and was eventually awarded a considerable cash settlement and the Low house in Savannah. Daisy's aim, after settling her affairs, was to study sculpture at an atelier in Paris. She wanted to establish a career for herself, something she felt had been lacking in her training. Art had always played an integral role in Juliette Low's life. She included it in everything from her cartoon about women's suffrage, to the illustrations in her earliest letters to her parents, to the paper dolls she created of Louisa May Alcott's 8 cousins. She drew with pencil, painted in oils, and sculpted in clay, plaster, and stone. She china painted, carved furniture, and even learned blacksmithing and designed a set of iron gates for Wellspring House, which are displayed today at her birthplace in Savannah. In September 1910, she wrote her sister Mabel that she was planning to go to Savannah immediately so that she could settle down to study sculpturing when she got back to Paris. For if I once start modeling, I'll probably get interested and want to go on and not interrupt it and come to America. This was not the case, and in typical Daisy fashion, travel pursuits rather than art claimed her attention. She headed for America, then Canada, and on to Egypt and to London before returning to Paris and the sculpture lessons she had started in 1906. Daisy threw herself into the enterprise with the ardor she brought to the mastery of every new skill, working at her modeling 8 hours a day. Little did she know then that she was about to embark down an entirely different path.